Hey everyone, I'm Ashley,
And I'm Jasmin.
and you're tuned into Ham Radio, a Stranger Things podcast.
So it's a ham radio. The Cadillac of ham radios.
And welcome back to another episode of the Ham Radio Stranger Things podcast. As always, me and Jasmin have a special episode for you guys. And what makes this one more special is because we have two first-time guests onto the podcast, and also they're our first guests of the new year. I'm talking, of course, about Zac and Devon, who are the hosts of the Hellfire Club Collective podcast. Zac, Devon, welcome to our show.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
Yeah, we're really excited.
Yeah, so, what we always like to do when we have guests on here is, we just like to ask a few little introductory questions. So I'm just going to start just by asking you guys, just, can you talk about your show? I know it's a rewatch, a Stranger Things rewatch podcast, but yours is a little bit different than most. So can you, elaborate on that and tell people why it's different?
Sure.
I'll let you take the reins on that one.
Yeah. So we got the idea as soon as we finished the latest season. We immediately started talking to each other about, whether or not they planned this out from the beginning.
I'm going to jump in real
for
quick.
it.
I had seen a couple articles online, like the Duffer Brothers saying that they had known what they were going to do from the very beginning. And I had brought it up to Zac and we talked about it a little bit. And he was like, wouldn't it be cool if we rewatched it to see if that was true or and if that falls a line? And that's kind of what happened.
Yeah. I mean, we figured, we're going to do this anyway. I know we're going to have thoughts about it because even just talking about it, I was like, there's no way. And we were like, you know what? We're going to do something different. We're going to record ourselves. We're going to talk about it. And we're going to try to make a podcast out of this. We're just going to talk about episode by episode. What about this episode could have inferred that this is one solid plan all throughout the entire show? And that's kind of what we try to do with the Hawkins Hellfire Collective is watch the show from season 1 to season 4 and say how much of this was planned and where can we see that plan in the show.
Yeah.
Awesome. And I listen every Sunday when you guys drop new episodes.
Thank you.
Because you bring up a lot of stuff that I hadn't thought of before. So that's been really, really cool. So when did you start watching Stranger Things?
It's when it started, right?
Yeah, like a couple days after it went live on Netflix.
Yeah, so we saw it come up and we're like, yeah, we'll put that on the list. And then we had gone to my parents' house and my brother was still living there and he was like, have you guys started watching Stranger Things yet? And we were like, well, no, it's on the list. He's like, no, you need to watch it now. And he put it on at their house and we watched the first
5
or 6 episodes. And then we came home, watched one. We were like, we need to go to bed. It's late. And then woke up early the next morning to watch the last episode. We immediately got hooked on it.
We binged hard when Stranger Things came out.
That's
and we have for
sorry.
We have binged real hard for every season after that. We'll watch it in a day and just be like, I think we need to go back and watch it again because we probably missed stuff.
Well, I'm a late bloomer. I didn't start watching until 2018. So between seasons 2 and 3. So really season 3 was the first one I ever watched in real time. So I think that's why I love season 3 so much. I do remember when the show first came out though, because I remember I watched the promos on Netflix and I saw 11 and I was like, wow, this show looks really weird. It looks like I don't think I can get into it because I thought it was about, I don't know, a mental institution and this girl was in there and I was just like, I don't really know if I can get into that. But now looking back on it, I do kind of wish that I would have used better judgment and just watched it, because I would have been part of the OGs. And also, Netflix didn't have a lot of original content at that time, and so it's probably a little bit more special to watch it back then. But I've been hooked ever since. And
I mean, I don't think anyone could blame you for that, though. I don't think Netflix really understood how to market their shows back then.
Well, there's that interview with, I think it's David Harbour, that like he said that like he'd talked to a friend of his back when they filmed it, and like he's like, I don't understand this marketing technique, and his friend who worked in television was like, oh, they're trying to bury it. They don't know what to do with it, or like they're trying to bury the show. And so I think like I don't know if they were trying to bury it, but I think you're right. I don't know if they, I mean, it was such a new thing. Like back then, like I think that was their first hit after Orange is the New Black, if I'm not mistaken. So
Mhm.
I don't think they knew how to market things. And also, like I feel like that was the era of like, like prior to that, a made for TV thing was a step down in your career.
mhm.
And Netflix, people like to, there's a lot of criticism, and that's valid. But I think what Netflix did is it took that whole made for TV thing and it took it from like this step down in your career to a level up to something that could make your career or, bring you new opportunities. And it was kind of the takeoff of streaming. So I think you're right. They didn't, I don't think they really knew, nobody knew, in fairness, how to market streaming back then. And similar to Ashley, I didn't watch Stranger Things until the pandemic, which I think I watched it for the first time in 2021. I say I think because the last 3 years are such a blur that it could have been 2020. Although I think it was 2021. But yeah, and similarly, I had cousins that watched it and friends that watched it, and people, said, oh, you gotta watch this. But every time it was described to me, I'd never seen a trailer, never seen a promo. I don't know how that escaped me, but it did. Like I knew it was a thing, but I didn't know anything else. And every time someone described me, they made it sound super scary. And I don't like horror. I like true crime, but I don't like horror. I don't like thrillers, don't like any of that. So when they described it to me, I was like, oh, this is like super scary. I'm not gonna like this at all. And then actually the reason I wound up watching was I saw the movie Free Guy. I don't know if you guys have seen it.
Yes.
Yeah. So I went and saw Free Guy, and I love that movie so much. I went and saw it twice in theaters, which I haven't done in years. And then I've watched it like twice when it came out on Disney Plus. And I walked out of that movie and I went, I need to see every person in that movie in like a 2,000 more things. And what got me to is something I loved about that movie is I was like, man, I'm watching it at theaters and I'm like, I know these actors, but I don't know from what. And I went home and Googled it. I'm like, oh, wow. Like the costume team did such a good job. They look so different in that movie. You recognize them, but not really. And so I was like, oh, that's that guy's in Stranger Things. And so like I was talking to a friend of mine and we watched a lot of TV together. And I'm like, you've seen it, right? Because I remember her talking vaguely about like being mad about Barb like 4 years ago or something. And I listened, but it didn't really mean anything to me. And then we were at her house and I was like, you've seen it, right? And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, I'm thinking about watching it. Do you think I would like it? Like, it sounds scary, but like, me. Because I feel like a lot of times when people describe things to me, they're not very accurate. But I trust her. Like, she knows what I can and cannot handle in terms of a TV show. And she's like, yeah, there's a couple of jump scares with the monster in season 1. But apart from that, like it's as it goes on, it's more of a mystery than it is horror. It's, then we get really into the 80s and the Russians. And I'm like, okay. So we started watching it. And then like first episode, I was kind of like, eh. But then like we started watching at my place. And then like we started binge watching it. And I was like, oh yeah, like I've just been watching it. And she's like, well, we could watch it together. I was like, you don't mind rewatching it? She's like, honestly, it's been so long. I remember season 1. I barely remember season 2 or 3. Because at this point, it had been ages since season 3 had come out. And so, yeah. And so then, like, we wound up binge watching it. And I remember getting kind of like you did to the end of the night and be like, we need to go to bed. But then Nancy went into the freaking tree. And I'm like, what do you know? No. So then we had to stay up. We were like up to like 11 or 12 o'clock at night. And it was like, because we got to figure out, like, if she went into the tree, does she come back out of the tree? Like, what? And so then we just like binge watched that for season 1 and then season 2 and then season 3. And we couldn't binge watch season 4 in the same way because it was really long and she was like on a trip to the US during volume 2. But like we watched it in like, yeah, I think volume 1 came out and we watched like everything we could on like the Friday, then I went to her house on the Saturday morning to like watch the rest of it. So yeah, we both got really into it, and yeah, and I've just become totally obsessed. So like Ashley, I'd never seen it before, and I kind of wish, like I said, I kind of wish I'd watched it sooner, because I think it would have been cool. Like, I see stuff online, I'm like, oh, would have been cool to be part of that. Or like when I was looking at stuff for a Halloween costume this year, I went as Chrissy, and
Nice.
yeah, I was Googling stuff, and obviously different companies have collabs with them now, right? And it turns out there was like an H&M collab for season 3, and I'm looking at it and I'm like, oh man, that stuff would have been cool to buy, but you only got it that year, right? You can't get it anymore. And so there's stuff like that where I'm like, oh, that would have been really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What were you saying?
We made sure
Oh,
Devon didn't actually miss out on the latest
yeah,
clothes collab.
I got the Hellfire Vans because I have a problem. I have an Eddie problem. So any Eddie merchandise has landed in my lap.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I fitted into the Christmas gifts this year too.
right on.
But yeah, like also, what Jasmin was talking about, with the other actors being in other stuff. Yeah, that's like one of the reasons that I chose to watch the It movie in 2017, because I was like, hey, well, not in 2017, but it was like 2019 when I watched it. I was like, oh, that's Finn Wolfhard. I mean, it shouldn't be that bad. Very bad mistake, because I do not like horror, and so I if I had to go back and redo that, I would not have watched it just because he was going to be in it. But yeah, one of the reasons that I like watching thrillers or psychological stuff is because of Stranger Things, because they just help me kind of learn more about Stranger Things, because it is a lot of psychological elements to it. So watching this show has been it has been really good to help me broaden my film and television viewing. So Zac, Devon, what has been your favorite season of Stranger Things so far?
That's tough.
Hardest question that will ever be asked.
I feel like it's hypocritical to say, or something, like, because you never want to say like, oh, the newest season is my favorite season, but I kind of think season 4 actually is my favorite season of the show so far.
So I think my favorite is season 1, honestly.
Yeah.
I really like season 1 because it's a great like jumping point of all the characters. Season 4 is a close second. But I really like season 1. I thought that was a great way to, kick off a show, and like there's nothing like the nostalgia factor and everything that you get from season 1, I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I think season 1 in general can stand on its own as its own thing. You don't actually need season 2, 3, and 4. They're all fantastic, but like season 1 can stand on its own as an incredible show and an incredible one shot. I think the reason I currently like 4 best is that even though there were character decisions I really didn't agree with, especially for for Mike and Jonathan, when season 4 was on, it was really on.
Yeah.
Like everything involving Nancy, Steve, Dustin, it was so good.
The Hawkins crew was on point.
Yeah. And even the Russia stuff. I went into season 4 thinking I was going to hate the entire Russian subplot. And as soon as they ended up like in the actual gulag where like the Demogorgon is down there, from that point on, it took off and I actually really enjoyed it. I thought I was going to hate it.
Yeah, to me, watching the first season of Stranger Things. I mean, of course, I wasn't, there in 2016 to watch it, but the first time I watched it, I really enjoyed it, because it's kind of like, the first time you hear a really good song, and even though you enjoy listening to it, multiple times, you're never going to get the feeling, the sensation of listening to it for the first time ever again. And that's kind of how Stranger Things is. Like, you're never going to get the thrill of the first 8 minutes of this show ever again. So to me, that's why it's so iconic, because they start you off like right away. Will gets taken, and then boom, we're off to the races. And yeah, I mean, it was just it was a very different show. And it still to a degree is. They like, I know Obi-Wan Kenobi came out the same time as season 4, and to my knowledge, season 4 outdid Obi-Wan in all the categories,
Yeah.
because people like different, but a good different.
Yeah.
So, looking back on season 1, after you watch season 4, do you think Vecna/Henry/1 was in the Duffer Brothers' minds at the time of writing the first season, or do you think that came later?
We talked about this, didn't we? And
We talk about this a lot.
Yeah, that we really don't think that was in their mind until like season 2, right? Isn't
Yeah.
that what we landed on?
I think the way that season 1 plays out, and especially the way it ends, and the context of understanding that the Duffer Brothers didn't know whether or not the show was going to be a success. They didn't know whether or not they were going to get a season 2. They initially intended to create an anthology series where it was a different story every season with totally new characters, not even based in Hawkins or anything.
Yeah.
With all of that in mind, it really doesn't seem like they had this plan in season 1. I think we've talked about this pretty extensively. We both think that once they started writing season 2, they planned out at least a rough sketch of everything to come afterward.
Yeah.
It seems pretty apparent that from season 2 on, Vecna was the plan.
Yeah, we found we were tying a lot more things together with like season 4 and possible future things with season 2 than we did with season 1. Like we would watch things like, that doesn't seem like it's gonna have anything to do with what's gonna happen next.
Right. Like, this doesn't play with the rules they established later on at all. Like, yeah, there's a lot of that in season 1.
Yeah, definitely. You could definitely view season 1 as actually being a standalone season, because I agree, like from season 2 onward, you can definitely tell that's when they knew where they wanted to go with the series. But I do think that they knew they wanted to do something with number 1, because when that companion novel, whatever, came out, the author was allowed to write about whatever she wanted to. She just couldn't write about number 1. So I do think they had a plan to eventually include number 1 possibly as the villain, but I don't think the Vecna Henry Creel stuff came until they were possibly writing season 4. Yeah. I knew you talked a lot about it on your show. That's why I was like, I have to ask them. Because now
we tend to go off rants.
Yeah.
Well, now he's a big part of this show, and it's ending, so it's only natural for us to speculate. Okay, has he been a part of their plan from the beginning, or is it just him coming in now to wrap up the story?
Right. Was he always supposed to be the big bad? And that's kind of like what we're trying to speculate a little bit.
Yeah. We want to find all the evidence for it. And I think there was a big moment in season 2 that really solidified it for us.
Oh, was there?
The clock.
Oh, in the end credits.
Yeah. In the end credits of one of the episodes, you hear the clock from season 4.
Oh, is that what people are making the edits of? Because I've seen people making. Have you guys seen those edits where they talk about like where you can hear a clock throughout the seasons? Have you guys seen those?
I do know what you're talking about with that, but this was different. So this was just at the end of an episode, like how sometimes when the credits will go, it'll be a continuation of the song that the episode ends on, or just sometimes it's just silence. And there was one particular episode, I don't remember what
I'm pretty sure it's immediately after the smoke is going into Will.
Okay.
Okay.
So the end of that episode, and like during the credits, like when the credits are rolling, it's a clear like grandfather clock, like chime. It doesn't sound like warped and old like it does in season 4, but it is clear that it is a grandfather clock. And I remember when we were watching that again, I was just like, that's a grandfather clock. Do they know what they're doing?
I'm pretty sure if you take that exact sound effect that they used for that episode, throw it into an audio editor and slow it down a couple decibels, you're going to hear the grandfather clock from season 4.
Yeah. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. I hadn't thought of that, which usually I don't. I'll be honest, usually I don't wait around unless it's like a season finale because I want to see if there's a post credit scene or not. But yeah, that's very interesting. I have to go back and rewatch the episode to see if it's in there. I mean, like, when Hopper first goes into the Upside Down in season 2, there's like a little dong, almost like.
That's one I was thinking of.
Yeah.
I've seen the edits of that one, and that one always gets me because it's like I think it's subtle to the point that you don't notice it, but now that we know that there's something with the clock and Vecna, now you can, like, I've noticed people started to pick up on more stuff.
Mhm.
So yeah, I'm just thinking about it. I don't know, like when I was listening to your podcast, I was thinking about it. I was like, yeah, like maybe you're right, and they didn't have that plan until season 2. But then I'm like, on the other hand, part of me is like, well, maybe there's just pieces that we're missing. Do you know what I mean? Like after watching season 4, my kind of feeling was like, okay, maybe this was the plan all along, or at least part of this was the plan, and there's just like a piece of the puzzle we're missing. That was kind of the vibe I got out of season 4. Like we got to the end of it, and I'm like, wait, we didn't find out this. We're missing piece of the puzzle. So like totally get what you guys are saying, but also to me, the vibe I got was I feel like we're just missing pieces of the puzzle. So that's kind of where I'm at. Yeah.
Definitely. I think a big one is why is the Upside Down stuck in the day that Will went missing? And we have theories about that. Like we won't go super into that right now, but like that's a big piece of the puzzle that they need to explain in the next season. If they don't, it's like a total missed opportunity.
Yeah, I think
Well,
mostly.
they have said they.
Oh, go ahead, Jasmin.
I was going to say the Duffers have said they are going to address that because I thought they were going to address that in volume 2 and then they didn't. And I know you guys have talked about this extensively, so I won't go too much into it, but something that, when I was listening to your episodes, I was like, you're like, oh, this doesn't work. And I'm like, ooh, it's so interesting that that's how you guys saw it, because to me, I'm like, the vibe I got was like, it's not that it doesn't work. It's that like Will has a kind of special relationship with the Upside Down. And I thought we were going to get into that in volume 2 because they set that up. And then I'm like, oh, we're not, it's like, oh no, we're going to that season 5. So like, I'm super excited about that because they've said Will's going to be like a big focal point of season 5. And I'm like, all right, because I love Will as a character. And as people keep pointing out this season, they're like, Will went missing and then he got possessed and then he got sidelined and then he's in a van. And like, when is Will's going to be Will's moment to shine? So I'm super excited for season 5. And in my heart, I feel like we're missing a piece of the puzzle. That piece of the puzzle is Will. We're going to see it. And even if it doesn't line up perfectly, I'm still super excited for it. Like, I'm so excited for that about season 5.
Absolutely.
We've been saying the same thing. We think you're right. Like, Will is...
5 needs to be Will's time to shine.
Yeah.
It has to be.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. 100%.
See, I'm going to be the outlier here. And hopefully, you will still want to come back on our show even after I say this. But I just want you to keep in mind that I like Will. Like, I have nothing against Will Byers as a character or as a person. But I do not think, right as of right now, with giving zero context of season 5, I just don't think that Will is going to be quite as important. I think as some fans have, that want him to be. I mean, it could be like, in season 5, instead of, feeling the tingling on his neck and not telling anyone, he could be like, hey, guys, he's here. It's probably going to be something like that. Because, characters have been hyped up before and then once you see it on screen, nothing ever actually comes to fruition. So I'm not going down that train just yet until I get a little bit more context, teasers, trailers, that sort of thing. Because I think at the end of the day, what's going to happen in season 5 is they're going to have everything happen, and then it's going to be for an epic showdown between 11 and Vecna. Now whether Will, whatever part he plays in that or not, I don't really know. But that's just my take on Will for next season, only because they've had so much time to continue to develop him, and as Jasmin pointed out, they've sidelined him, and then this season they just put him in a van and they don't really have him doing much. And I just, going into the 5th and final season, I don't really know if they have time to completely give him a bunch of stuff and then explain, why he's able to do this, and this. Because, one of the fears I have for season 5 in general is that they're not going to have enough time to, wrap up the storylines that have been set in season 4, much less all the ones from back in season 1, the plot holes that have yet to be answered. So I just want for season 5, like if it's important for Will to, have powers or what have you, and it aids the plot, then by all means, please do that. But if it's not, please don't waste a second of screen time on it when there's other more important things that you could, be filming for it. But that's just my hot take. That's probably the last one for that I give. So
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be
Oh,
surprised if you're right in that, he really doesn't have much of a role to play in the final showdown. I think if nothing else, I think he'll be the catalyst for solving a lot of the mysteries that we still have left over.
Yeah.
yeah, and I would be really fine with that. Because so far Will Byers is the only person that has lived in the been in the Upside Down for a week and lived to tell the tale. So absolutely, if we need to learn something about it from his perspective, because we never really have so far on the show, which I think is a shame. Um, then yeah, by all means, please do that, Duffer Brothers. If you're watching this podcast, please do that.
If you haven't checked it out, there is the comic and it's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and like on that note, I feel like the solution to like the issues that both you, not both, all of you guys are raising is to me like, and Ashley, I've talked about this on the podcast, but is some kind of not a flashback episode, but something where, kind of like I liked how they interwove more of Eleven's backstory this season, where like she was in the present but also in the past, and I like the way they did that, and so I'm kind of hoping for something like that. You know what I mean? Like we've talked about, seeing Eleven's escape, seeing more of Will in the Upside Down. And so I feel like that's a good solution. You know what I mean? Like if they're showing it through flashbacks, or like you have one of those scenes, I love it when they do it, where like a character is about to explain something and they cut to a flashback. That way we can see it visually. So that's interesting to us without like standing there while like a character expositions to everybody else. Because I feel like that's a lot of issue in other TV shows. So I'm kind of hoping for something like that, where we get that backstory in like a visually interesting way that kind of fills us in. So when we cut back to the present, it's like, all right, now that we all understand and the characters understand, we can move forward. Yeah, so that's also why I'm excited for that, because I've really enjoyed when they have done flashbacks like that. I think they do them well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
11's powers create the perfect opportunity to do that in an interesting way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
100%.
So, as Jasmine just mentioned briefly there about Eleven's escape, and this is something that we've talked about a lot, either on here or just conversation. So I wanted to ask your guys' opinion on it. What do you think was the catalyst that caused 11 to leave the lab prior to the season 1 happenings?
We I don't know if we talked about it on the podcast, but I think we might have talked about it like together. Like, don't like her final straw was the cat
Yeah,
incident where
she ended up killing guards.
Yeah, like Brenner wanted her to kill the cat and she refused, and then wound up, she was getting punished or whatever, and wound up like, I think that was like kind of her tipping point. Like, I need to get out.
Well, also, I think she escapes immediately after the Demogorgon gets out. So it also could have been a fear reaction because she touches the Demogorgon, it sees her, and then as much as we can line up that timeline, that's when the Demogorgon kind of finds the lab and the tear opens up and it gets out. So it might have also just been like, hey, I can't do that again.
Yeah. Stop making me do this
Yeah.
kind of thing. Because you can, like, when you see her in the lab and stuff, even in season 1, you can tell she's not happy with anything. So like between the cat and the Demogorgon and all of that, I think it was just like she had just reached her final straw and was like, I need to peace.
Yeah.
Like, bye.
Yeah.
I don't know why I know this way out, but
right,
I know
but
it.
I know it.
Yeah. Well, that's why
I've repressed this in my vault.
Well, that's like what we're hoping we're going to get a flashback to that, because when I was watching the season with my friend for volume 1, she was like, and I have a better kind of memory for those type of timelines and stuff. Because she was like, wait, is this right before season 1? And I counted, and she's like, and I was like, no, 11 would have been about 7 there. And since we know she repressed it, which, I mean, I have to be honest, for most TV shows, when they do like a repressed storyline, I'm like, that's bogus. But this one I actually buy. Because if you inflict enough trauma, especially on somebody who's very, very young, like, that does make sense to me as like a trauma response, like a true trauma response. But I was like, yeah, I really hope we're getting a flashback to that, because, whatever that catalyst was, you know what I mean? If it was fear, if it was just she hit her final straw, what I'm trying to figure out after watching season 4 is I'm like, how did she, like, she's repressed it. So somewhere in her mind, she knew how to get out. But since they caught 1 and 11 down there, like when several years prior, obviously they would have amped up security. So I want to know how she got from the lab into the basement to get outside. Like, I want to see that, because I'm like, how did she do that? Since like Brenner and the staff would have been informed that this is a thing, this is a way out, and she's done it before or almost got out that way. So that's what I want to know.
I have a sneaking suspicion that that's going to get hand waved by the Duffers.
Mm.
I agree with you. I would really love to know exactly how that went down. But
because that's so true. Like, they saw them down there in the past. They would have amped up security. There would have been like guards to keep that, like, you can't, nobody, like, as a restricted area.
Yeah.
And then she just goes out the same way.
Yeah, and like, I hope they're not going to hand wave it, because I'm like, well, if they are going to hand wave it, I'm not sure what the point of bringing that up was, because like, it wasn't like we all had a burning question, what caused her to leave the lab, what caused her to get out that way. That wasn't a burning question I don't think anybody had. So I hope we are going to dive back into that, because my other thought was, well, like, back when all the other kids were at the lab, it was easier for her to kind of not sneak out, but like, there's more distractions available to kind of pull like a one over. But by the time right before season 1 starts, she's the only kid there. Brenner's the only original surviving member, because everyone else in the lab is dead. So all the staff are new, or they've retired. Like, since we know that Kali looks up, like, they look up the other guy that, like, you know what I mean? Like, everyone else either left the lab or been killed in the massacre at that point. So all the other new people, like, they would be told this, and they would be told to amp up security. So I hope they're not going to hand wave it, just because that's something I really liked about season 4, and I hope it pays off. Is there's a lot of things, those type of storylines, but also like romantic storylines. I'm like, whoa, never thought that was coming back. Didn't have a burning desire to see that come back. Not unhappy about it. Happy about it, actually. But like, that wasn't a burning question we were left with after 3 seasons. So I thought that was an interesting way to take it. You know what I mean? To bring up these questions that like nobody really had, and be like, what if? Or, hey, we could bring this back, you know? So I'm hoping they do come back to that stuff, because I'm like, if they don't, and they just brought it up when we didn't need to know, like it wasn't a burning question, I think I will be disappointed, honestly.
I literally just had a thought about this while we were talking about it. She probably, at least from a timeline perspective, she probably escaped at the same time the Demogorgon was doing his thing inside the lab and murdering people at the beginning of the season.
Oh, I hadn't thought about that, because remind me, like I feel like she sees the Demogorgon, but so it actually does go into the lab. I'd forgotten about that. I don't remember her seeing it in the void.
So she doesn't see it there at the beginning. But like that set off a big red alert across the entire lab. Like, the sirens wailing and everything. All the staff was
That's
like
how it's
scrambling.
Yeah.
So that would have given her the perfect opportunity to slip out.
Oh, okay.
Never let a good crisis go to waste.
Exactly.
She saw that crisis and was like, I'm out of here. I don't know how, but I'm getting out.
Yo, this is my chance.
Bye.
Let's go.
Bye. I'm out.
But yeah, like she would either had to, take an advantage of the situation there, or escape within the night, because, where Henry shows her, the exit. I mean, that's a long way. In that tunnel.
Crawl,
yeah. From the boiler
really
room.
Long way.
I mean, it's from a boiler room all the way to the edge of the woods beyond the fence. That is a long way. And I know, she's a tiny child, but still, that's a very, very long way.
That's why she was so hungry when she had the bennies.
Yeah. They don't or something?
Huh?
Like when they find the scrap of like her gown, I feel like it's either Mr. Clark or one of the deputies. Doesn't someone comment on goes, really, a kid through there, it's pretty small? And Hopper's like, depends how small the kid is.
Yeah.
He's like, why am I surrounded by idiots?
That's what made him think it was Will, because Will is such a small little guy.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, something I really love about Hopper as a character, and I'm excited to kind of see this, when he come back in season 5. But like, even when he can be an ass, he's a really good cop. And those moments when he's looking at the people around him being like, oh my God, like, why? Like, I know I chose to move back here, but why is everyone around me so like incompetent? Like, oh my God, guys. Like, that is one of my favorite things. And something I'm really excited for season 5 is I think there's a lot of those moments where Hopper's like, oh my God, this is the best we got. I'm so excited to see the gang and the party all come together in season 5. And now that I feel like we're kind of past that, to be like, all right, if you're here, you've earned your place here. So let's just like get to work and be like, that sounds like a dumb idea, but it could be possible. So let's just go with it and see if we can make this work. I'm super excited for that. Also, thinking about season 1, one of my favorite lines that season is when him and Joyce are talking and they're talking about the drawing. And she's like, well, is it good? Like, is the art good? And he's like, I don't know. It's a kid's drawing. And she shows it to him. And he goes, have I been chasing the wrong kid this whole time? Chills. Like, one of the best moments of that season for me is it's like, yeah.
That's even better, going back and knowing like the relationship he and Eleven have, and be like, no, man, you're chasing your daughter.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Exactly.
And I've heard you mentioned on your podcast before that that was one of the relationships that you think was planned out from the beginning, and I agree. Just like her and Mike's relationship, I think they definitely they knew they wanted to get the 11 and Hopper together as father and daughter, and her and Mike together as boyfriend girlfriend type. And I think that's her and Hopper's relationship is like a very beautiful relationship, because he lost his daughter to cancer, and now he's gained a daughter, albeit under very different circumstances than one would like. But it took him a while to learn how to be a father to a daughter of her age. But once he gelled, I mean, he really gelled, and I know things are going to be different in season 5, but I do hope we get more Hopper 11 screen time next season.
Oh, we need to.
Definitely. Because we haven't rewatched season 3, but like, I don't know. I want to see them. I want to see them more together. I want to see that dynamic play out a little bit more.
Especially because of how affected 11 is all through season 4
Yeah,
Mhm.
over Hopper not being
Yeah.
around. Like how heartbreaking
like
those
they're
first couple episodes, like when she makes the diorama.
right.
Oh my god.
And
Dirayama.
just oh yeah,
I knew she was doomed when she said that. I was like,
Yeah.
no.
and then just like that reunion at the end of the last episode of season 4 was not long enough for everything that she had gone through. I need more. I need more Daddy Hopper and 11. I just need it.
Yep.
So,
And, like,
oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was gonna say on that note, like, I love their moment. Like, it's so subtle, but I love their moment when she's freaking out and crying. She's like, I never stopped believing. I kept the door open 3 inches because he was so like he was so freaking out about that last season, and he's just like, I know it's okay. And I really like, obviously you never wish someone to wind up in the situation Hopper's in, but as a lot of people have commented on, I think it's is him kind of. This has been such a horrible experience, like the worst thing you could possibly go through, right? Like we've seen a lot of horrible stuff, but I think being tortured and held in a Russian prison, like the worst, like one or at least one of the worst. And I think I love that he kind of, you're right, it wasn't long enough, but he came back with that moment of kind of like, it puts things into perspective, right? Things that really bothered you, like the fact that your daughter is dating, or the fact that they won't keep the door open 3 inches, no longer matter when you just type that. And
Yeah.
I loved it. Yeah, like I loved it was short, but like I loved like just the his entire demeanor has changed. He's like, it's okay. It's okay. And him and Mike reunite. Oh my god. Waterworks. And oh yeah, we
Sad.
need more of that. And I saw some people comment that we didn't stuff of like the Byers Hopper family at the beginning. Joyce is taking them in California. That we didn't see enough, and I get that they had to get the ball rolling. I get that, but I really hope to see more kind of domestic moments in kind of interspersed between the action in season 5. I think that's just such an interesting dynamic, between the 5 of them. Like I'm just very interested to see more of that for them.
I think we need to see both Mike and Jonathan have their characters fixed up from where they were in season 4. But we need like season 1 through 3, Mike and Jonathan to come back so that we can have those relationships really play out on screen, because I feel like Will stepped it, like even for as unsure as Will is in everything he does, he stepped into the shoes of like being the big brother for 11 during that time. And we only got like a small glimpse of it. And Jonathan just decided, all right, well, I'm going to go get high and hang out with Dark Isle from now on. Like, which made no sense for his character.
Also, it's like my friends have commented on this, but like in previous seasons, like Jonathan was like actively pursuing something, right? And he was always taking pictures. That was his entire character. Okay. And then season 4 comes along and we don't see him take a single photo. I don't think he even holds a camera at any point. And he's just off getting high with Argyle. And like, I've multiple people said this to me, but they're like, Mike and Will are the ones taking the lead when they're on the road trip, which is insane because they're like, what, 14, 15?
Right.
And
it's like Jonathan's not
or just dicking around. Like, what?
Right.
And like, you've also pointed this out to me, but like Mike, it's like, I feel like he started doing the work to be a better boyfriend. I'm like, okay, great. But I don't think he's really done the work to be a better friend. And I'm like, oh my God. Like, oh, your heart just goes out to Will. He's trying so hard here. He's being everything to everybody, putting everybody, like setting himself on fire to keep everybody else warm. Poor guy. And like, Mike, pull your head out of your ass. Like, oh, just come on, dude.
Will deserves better.
He does. Will deserves better.
Yeah. Okay, 100%. Like, I'm not opposed to Byler, but I think here's my dream for season 5. One of them. Like, he not only does he deserve better, but I'd really love to see Will, find love with another student, like another student at their high school or something. Because I'm like, to me, like, either Mike doesn't love him back, or if he does, he's being a real ass about it. Like, he's being really, like, he deserves better. You know what I mean? Like, Will deserves somebody. I love Will, and he deserves somebody, I think, who is like 100% into him. Like, Robin and Vicky are into each other. Like, I want that for him. You know, like,
He just
yeah.
like, I mean, not even on like the Byler sense, but just as like in a friendship way, like Will deserves to have a better friend than Mike was to him in
Yeah.
season 4. Just overall, like, be nice
Oh, the
to
whole birthday
Will.
thing? The birthday
Right,
thing.
like it was his birthday. Rollergate was his birthday, and nobody said happy birthday to Will. It was all just, I'm gonna smash this girl in the face with a roller skate.
That
Ah!
might actually be a continuity error, but if it is, it's a really funny one.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm divided on whether that's a continuity error or not. But regardless, like I agree. Like, it's like from Eleven's perspective, I get where she's coming from, right? Like, she's obviously dealing with some trauma and
Right.
has not been living in society. And you don't see much of it, but like, her and Will clearly have this special bond, right? And so I get her. But like, the reason he's pissed at Mike is it's like, you are clearly not dealing with this type of trauma. I mean, he has trauma as well, but like, not the same. And it's like, we grew up in the same town. Like, I'm gonna be miserable all day if I'm third wheeling. Like, you didn't even hug me at the airport. Like, and like, I feel like if Will wasn't in love with Mike, he wouldn't be putting up with his shit. You know what I mean?
No,
Like,
no
if my
way.
friend treated me that
absolutely
way,
not. Drop
I'd
him like
be
a
like,
sack of potatoes.
Lucas would have punched him at that point.
Yeah.
Lucas would have
Jackson
gone
would
first
walked
blood.
away.
I think
Watch as Will also picks up a roller skate.
I
Found
have
the
a
other
little,
roller skate. Let's just go. Let's just him and Elle just bounce. They just bounce it. Yeah.
I have a little theory about maybe why Mike is so indifferent to Will, especially in season 4. I think it's because he knows that Will is gay and probably knows that Will, has feelings for him. And I'm not saying that Mike is like homophobic, because I mean, there's been no, real evidence to point to that. I think really what it is Mike either A, doesn't know how to, respond to that, or B, he doesn't want Will to get the wrong idea of, I reciprocate those feelings. And I think that's why, like you said, he didn't hug him at the airport. I think because it was very, very awkward. And he didn't even like, give him a clap on the back or anything. It was like, hey, and I think it's because, Mike knows Will's gay and knows that Will has feelings for him. And I don't think he wants Will to be hurt by anyone, especially himself, because I do think he sees Will as his best friend. And I think what Mike really wants Will to understand is like, 11's my girlfriend. I love 11. We can still be best buds, but we can't be, in a relationship or anything. And I don't want to hurt your feelings by telling you that. So it's best if I, act like an awkward jerk. So that's my little theory on that.
I think that's
That
one of
would
the things that
surprise
kind
me.
of drives me nuts about season 4 Mike is season 1 and 2 Mike is a more emotionally intelligent character than the exact same kid 2 years later.
Hmm.
Which I would like to think is somehow intentional, but to me it just it like to me it feels like them saying we've kind of forgotten how Mike should act like as a character. You know what I mean? Like I feel like that same token, that same season 1 Mike that we saw, if he had those same ideas, he wouldn't choose to be a jerk to Will. He would choose to be like a supportive friend who has like trouble navigating this. Like not to poo-poo your theory, because I'm actually like I kind of agree with you, but like that's why I feel like that character was kind of done dirty this season. Like
Yeah.
him and Jonathan,
Mhm.
just
Yeah.
their actions
know
don't
that's-
match the characters we've been watching.
Yeah, I'm not that concerned about like if Jonathan's character doesn't recover. I think I'm fine with that. But I agree about Mike that like, and I really hope, because I don't know if you guys were thinking this, but like when Volume 2 hadn't come out yet, I was expecting we were going to get to Volume 2 and we were going to find out what was really going on with Jonathan, because obviously he's lying about everything. But I'm like, okay, did he not get into Emerson or NYU? Did he not get in? Did he not apply? Like I thought we were going to find that out, and we didn't. And then
Wait,
like
didn't
I
he
thought
say
there
he
was going to
didn't
be a
apply?
review.
Oh, wow.
Hmm?
I thought he said he never applied, but I don't know. I might be wrong.
No, what he said, unless I'm mistaken, I think like he tells Argyle he's applied to Lenore Hills Community College, but he doesn't. He says I'm not going to Emerson, but he doesn't actually say if he applied or not. So I'm like, did he? My friends have been doing him. Like, did he
He
not
never-
apply or? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying, yeah, I was agreeing with you. Like he never states whether or not he actually applied there and didn't get in or what. He just says he's not going.
He's not going.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was expecting us to get an answer that we didn't. So I'm like, all right, they clearly got to address that. And then all of my friends and I said, the minute Hopper shows up, he's gonna take one look at Jonathan and know that something is up. He's gonna be able to, also all three of them, because he's been a cop his whole life, right? I'm like, he's gonna take one look at them. We all went, he's gonna take one look at those kids and be like, I mean, they're not kids anymore, but like he's gonna take one look and be like, what the hell? And I think something that bothered me, I think it bothered a lot of people at the end of season 4, is that like, A, we skipped 2 days, and B, it's so short at the end there. Like that final shot is epic, but because we skipped that time, it's cut off. So you're like, the things I think we were all expecting to kind of happen didn't happen there. And yeah, and I was hoping for that too. And like I agree, like I was also expecting Will to come out officially. I was expecting, us to get some more clarity on what the hell's Mike's problem was this season. Like,
Yeah. And just with the 2 days thing, there's a lot that I feel like needs to get brought up. Like, how did they get out of the Upside Down when the rope was cut? Dustin clearly broke his leg trying to like get back in after getting out. Like, you can't tell me that they all just like formed a human chain and climbed out the like,
Well, plus the cracks started at each portal, and
Right.
when the
Yeah.
cracks
Yeah.
started, they cut that one dude in half. So like, was
Yeah.
it safe to go through those portals?
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm assuming it wouldn't have been safe to go through even from the other side. So like, how did they get out? They have a lot of explaining to do in that 2-day time frame. And if it's just like glossed over or just like mentioned, that's something that I'm going to be really mad about, because I feel like that'll be a major plot hole if it's just like, oh yeah, and we did this to get out of the Upside Down. No, I need to know details. Like, how did you do this?
Go back, show us
Show
those 2
us
days.
how that happened.
Yeah, I'm also hoping for flashbacks there. I know a friend of mine had a theory that since they were in the Creel house on the other side, or part of them were, like, I don't know how Dustin would have gotten back.
Right.
But they're like, oh, did they go back through one of the openings in the Creel house? Since there's floorboard to kind of hang on to, would that have been a little bit safer or something? Or could they have used something in the Creel house? And I'm like, okay, I could kind of see that. But then I'm like, where's Eddie's body? Did they leave it down there? That seems weird.
You have
Did they take it-
theories.
Right.
Like, I don't, we're not gonna get in cast. We're not getting,
No.
we'll be here all night. We're not getting in cast. But
That's
like,
not the theory. That's not the theory.
wait, what's the theory?
So I am very familiar with the cast theory, but that's not the theory that I am going with anymore. It's mine and Zach's own little concoction theory that we made up. But it kind of makes sense. But regardless of that, like, right, I don't think that Dustin would have been okay with just leaving his new best bud Eddie's body in the Upside Down to just like be there, and
Let's
let's
leave him
just
for the
leave him for the
bats.
bats. There's just, I need some flashbacks for those 2 days for closure.
Yeah, and on top of that, like, I got to the end of that season, everyone's real smiley, and I'm like, does Mike know that Eddie died?
Oh my god.
I don't think he
We
does
talked
yet.
about that too. Like he would have been upset about it. They were friends.
Did no one
Yeah,
tell
also,
Mike?
he's like growing his hair out to match his, right? Like, I
Right.
feel like he would have been upset. So, like, is he?
I remember
does he-
watching I remember watching volume like that part of volume
Mhm.
2 and thinking like, is this a dream sequence? Everybody seems really happy. Like what happened? Did they like all forget what happened? Like did they lose their memory?
Mhm.
Are
Wha-
we missing something?
Why is Dustin the only one who gives a
Right.
shit?
Why is Dustin the only one that looks
Yeah,
sad?
he's crying, and no one else. Yeah. Honestly, though, dream sequence, I had the same thought, but that's not why. When it opens and like, Karen Wheeler is like holding the box and bringing Holly and her and Holly's inside, and Ted saying something about all like about the news, and she goes out and she goes to hand the box to Nancy, and Robin and Steve are there. I had the sudden realization. I was like, wait, is this? Have we fast forwarded to like the fall? Is Nancy going off to college? Is Steve going with her? Like, is that what we're seeing here? That was my
Mhm.
thought. Because I'm like, oh, everyone's kind of happy, smiley. Her mom's handing her a box. And then like the van pulled up and I'm like, what?
Right.
Like,
It's very abrupt.
yeah.
Yes.
And I like, honestly, I feel like I know they've got stuff obviously they're trying to set up, but I feel like that would have been, not that I want them to skip all the way to the fall, but I feel like we're clearly missing something, because I feel like that would have made more sense in a way than we skip 2 days and everyone's suddenly very happy. I mean, I get that they're happy to survive like certain death, but that's not like that's a new experience for them. Like,
Yeah, like
you know, it's
the
like once a year.
the pizza van crew, it makes sense for them to be happy because as far as they know, they
Yeah.
saved the day. But like getting
Exactly.
back, they should have come back to like some grim faces being like, you guys don't know what went down. Like it's
Yeah.
very weird.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like I get that they're happy when they show up because they hadn't been able to get a hold of them. But like they're very happy, and then when they ask about like, oh, like Lucas at the hospital, it's like, oh, like what happened? They're like, that's when everyone's faces fall.
Yeah.
So I'm like, yeah. And
What
yeah.
happened? You were there, 11. You know what happened.
Yeah. Exactly. Mike. But like, yeah. Yeah. I concur.
So, and if people were wondering why, like all these questions are about season 1 and season 2, it's because the Hellfire Club Collective podcast right now, they have not, placed at the time of this recording, not made it to season 3 or season 4 for coverage. So I thought I would just trim it down to the seasons that they have covered, which is 1 and 2. And this is probably like one of the biggest questions that I have that I haven't seen a lot of others, question, and that is, why do you think Terry wanted 11 to find 8? Also, do you think we'll ever see Terry again?
Okay,
You
I'll
can
take
go
this
on
one.
that one.
So I'm gonna be real here because I don't think we're ever gonna see Terry again. I think Terry wanted 11 to find 8 because the Duffers had plans for a spin-off show.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think 8 was ever intended to play a larger role in Stranger Things.
Mm-hmm.
Although her powers would be incredibly useful in season 5.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're going to make an attempt to redeem that character, they got to do it in season 5. But I sincerely believe after watching that episode of the show that was not an episode of Stranger Things, that they specifically wrote it that way so that they could set up another show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
I
that
agree with
whole episode is basically a proof of concept for new characters, for a different story.
Yeah, it doesn't even feel like an episode of Stranger Things. Like the filming is different.
Yeah, it's
the
shot
music,
differently.
It's shot different. The music is different. Everything about it doesn't feel like you're watching the same show. Now the Terry stuff, I feel like it gives 11 some closure,
Oh, absolutely.
which is important for her. But I agree with you. Like, I think that her having 11 find Callie was just so that they could introduce this character as a possibility for, oh, well, if she's, if this is
Oh,
received well,
it's called a backdoor pilot.
there
It's
you
a
go.
backdoor pilot.
Yeah, if this is received well, we can go forward with this. And she wasn't.
No. And I think the ultimate like nail in the coffin for that is season 4. Because one of the things we do on our podcast is we'll take interstitial episodes where we'll talk about the Stranger Things comic books, because the Duffers have come out and said, like, all of the comic books are canon to the story unless we decide they are not. And at this point, there's only 2 comic books that they've decanonized, and they're the ones that deal with kids from the program that were not, 8 or 11 or 1. And they did that by writing their own story for those other kids in season 4. Those comics do make a brief tie back to Callie and show us that, like, hey, this all exists in the same universe. And by going back in season 4 and saying, okay, those stories are no longer canon, all of the kids had the same powers, Callie was an outlier, they've basically said, like, we are not coming back to this. We have thrown this idea on the cutting room floor, and it's just going to stay where it is.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely think that the whole Callie stuff was, like you said, a backdoor pilot. I think if it wasn't the case, then they would have had, either 11 just interact with Callie, or they would have had Callie come look for 11, without all those other characters. And I agree, it definitely does not feel like a Stranger Things episode. That's why I don't really like to watch it. To be honest with you, if it weren't for 11 being in the episode, I probably wouldn't, watch it. But I would like to see Terry Ives at least one last time, only because I think her story is so interesting, and I feel like we don't know, we still don't know a lot about her and her backstory, and especially all of her time at the lab. I would always like to know, in season 2, when 11 looks through those boxes in Hopper's cabin and she finds that picture of Brenner and Terry walking together. I always wondered, like, what were they doing? Like, why were they pictured like that together, and who took that picture? Like, was it a government agency, or was that on like video cam, like security cam footage? Just little things like that, that I'm interested in, that I would like to see again. But like you said, I don't know if we will really get that unless we see Terry in some flashbacks. And I say that because if the theory holds true that Henry Creel is Eleven's biological father, uh, then we probably would see some Terry flashbacks. So yeah, that's
I mean, I
that's what I
will
think
say
on it.
with Terry and Brenner, they are releasing like a Brenner comic, kind of like his origin story. So
Mhm.
that might be in there. I mean, I know it's not the show, but it could be like a cool tie-in. I'm excited to read that because I would like to know, has Brenner always been like, was he always this like cold-hearted, like gross person, or was he like, was he more human? What happened to him? Why did he become this way?
Yeah, I've thought that many times myself. Um, I also have another theory about his past, but we don't have enough time to discuss that. Uh, maybe one day, come on here and discuss that at length, because I feel like it's a very compelling theory, and if it were to ever make its way um, in the show, which is highly doubtful, um, that would just be awesome. Um, so how do you think the series will end? I know that's a very broad question, but I always love to ask our guests about this just because I like to, hear your opinions.
Well, we're definitely on the it started with Will, it's gonna end with Will train
Yes.
in a way.
In a way.
I definitely think that there is gonna be, 11 and Vecna are gonna
Have a showdown.
have a showdown.
So we've got a few different theories that we think, if they pan out, could lead to pretty strong like confrontations in the show. Because
Mhm.
we have Devin has her Eddie theory. We've talked about the possibility of Max becoming a vessel for Vecna,
Mhm.
since there's nothing in there right now.
Yeah.
And I think so. Elle's big thing is going to be trying to get Max back. But I think Vecna is going to use what's left of Max against her. I'm sure that'll end with Max coming back. I really don't think the Duffers are going to leave her in the lurch like that. I do not think Jonathan is going to make it to the end
Yeah,
of the show.
neither one of us think that Jonathan's gonna make it.
Really?
That Jonathan is probably gonna like his big brother is gonna come out again, and he's gonna die protecting Will
Yeah.
in one way or another.
I think Steve's going to go for the big sacrifice, and
Mhm.
Jonathan's going to stop him and do it himself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting.
It's
And then
interesting.
everybody is just gonna go to therapy for a
Forever.
while.
I
One
hope so.
therapist in Indianapolis is making mad bank off the government when they all go to therapy and they get Owens to pay for it. Like,
What else did we talk about? Have we talked about?
So
Have we talked about it?
I mean, as far as how it ends, I don't think there's going to be too much. I don't think there's going to be anything crazy in the resolution of the show. I think,
sorry, not to. I'm gonna.
Sorry.
I would like to know, since season 4 ended with all of those gates opening, like, will they have reached other places? Is it just going to be like central to Hawkins, or will it have like spread? Because I have read some things about there being a time jump in season 5. So like, is it just going to I feel like it's like such a massive event that happened, like all these essentially these giant holes in the earth, they have to like fissure and crack
Keep
and
expanding.
spread and keep expanding. So
Mhm.
is it going to have spread throughout the world and become like this like massive thing that they have to try and contain, or is it just going to be, all of Hawkins?
Yeah. Are we going to contain the end of this show to Hawkins, or is it going to be like a Road
Is it
Warrior
going to
situation?
go like everywhere?
That's a question I don't think we have an answer to.
Yeah.
I honestly don't know where they're going to go with that.
What direction they'd go in.
Yeah,
I
that's
am sure that
interesting.
Dustin is going to be a badass in season 5. I'm sure.
Yeah.
who is?
Dustin.
Dustin's going to go full Eddie.
Gonna go full Eddie.
Buns.
Yeah, he's going to be a little metal kid.
I could see that for him. That would be super cool. I could see that. I could see that for him, definitely. One of my favorite lines that season 4 is, and you were wearing that Weird Al t-shirt, which I thought was brave. And I had a moment where I'm like, oh, right, because Weird Al wasn't cool back then. Like, now he's cool. Like, some of that stuff, I'm like, oh, right. Or like, I knew about the Satanic Panic, obviously. Like, we had that here in Canada as well, but like, obviously not on the same scale as usual. But like something that like I knew about, but I was kind of like, oh, right. Like, some of that stuff you're like, oh, like, it's insane to think that was ever a thing, but it was a thing. And like, oh, or some of that stuff where like they talk about some of the pop culture references. I was like, oh, right. Back then that wasn't cool. Back then that wasn't like a cool thing to do. Now it is, but not back then.
Yeah.
It's so weird for me, like personally, because I started playing D&D like in my 20s. And I think about like somebody had an issue with like, I'm a nerd. I'm a huge nerd. This is the nerdiest thing I have ever done. And I love it. But like people thought this was satanic. It's just a bunch of it's just a bunch of nerds sitting around a table together, like eating corn chips, drinking soda, and telling stories. Like this was what the
Yeah.
oh my god.
Yeah.
This is what you
But-
chose?
This is what you zeroed in on?
Like I said, bored housewives looking for something to do, right? It's like that's the joke. Like that was I had a professor, and they talked about and I never knew this before, but like the rating system we have. I mean, it doesn't really matter now, but like back in the day when we had CDs and previous stuff, like the rating system on them and about things being labeled like certain things. So that was like basically bored conservative housewives with nothing to do being like, this is bad for our children. And the CJ Bennett was the same thing, right? It was like, this is the hill we're dying on, apparently. And like that's the equivalent of like thinking there's Satanism in like Magic the Gathering. Like, you know,
Right.
like it's
I'd say there's a stronger argument for magic because the artwork is pretty intense sometimes.
like an argument. But
I just want a convincing ending. Like I just want an ending that convinces me that it was all worth it and that this was the right ending for the show. I have, other specifics that I want to see, in the last like 20 to 30 minutes of the series finale. But yeah, I mean, like I tell the Duffer Brothers, like, just convince me. You say that
Yeah.
you know how to stick the landing. Well, then, prove it.
yeah, stick the
Convince
landing.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Show me that you
Yeah.
actually do.
Yeah.
There is
Yeah.
a lot on the table.
Yeah.
And like I feel like as a fan, we just have to go in saying, you know what? I don't want everything. I just want to be satisfied.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And something I want to, I know people like to speculate about who's going to die and blah, blah, blah. And to be honest, I'm not really into death speculation because everybody was all over Steve. And I get that there was a billboard and whatever. But then I was like,
We lost her.
Oh no.
No.
Well, she mentioned Steve. I think originally Steve was supposed to die in season 1.
Yeah, he
He was.
They originally wanted him to, and then
They're like, no, Joe
Joe
Keery is
Keery's
too much
too
of a
good.
delight.
He's too good.
We want him around.
Yeah.
I mean,
And
like-
it's like, Jason was what Steve, was supposed to be in season 1.
oh, I could never have seen Joe Keery do that. That's not no.
Nah,
No.
couldn't pull it off. He's just too likable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that was what they originally had wanted Steve to be like
Who's gonna
Jason.
be
Oh
be a
god.
huge jerk.
Ew.
Jason and Billy. Yeah.
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 My two favorite people.
Yeah.
We have
Oh,
very
man.
strong opinions on Billy.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we-
I have listened to all the podcasts, but some I'm like, yeah. Also, man, like it's something I like about the show is that like the people who are the best actors come through. Like Joe more depth and nuance than they were expecting, and I'm like, wow, like he's so much better as the Steve we have now than being Jason or Billy, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, that's exactly
Absolutely.
what happened with Eddie too. Like he brought
Yeah.
something to that character they didn't
Mhm.
expect, and they were like, "Oh, we have to keep him around. Like this, no, this is too good."
Yeah. They rewrote
Yeah.
a lot of his stuff during the pandemic.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and like I appreciate that. I
Yeah.
really do. Like if you have an actor who's really killing it and just fits into your show so well, yeah, don't waste the potential.
Yeah. No, 100% agree. Like there's a lot of other shows I was like a huge fan of, and something that's bothered me in the last few years is like as the shows got towards the end, like you'd be all in for a storyline and actors would have chemistry and you'd be like, oh, this is great. And then they wound up going another way, and I try to read articles to understand, and the answer turned out to be, well, we decided we were going with this last summer. So rather than following where the actors kind of performance and chemistry led, we went with something we decided last summer, and it shows. It's so obvious when they do that, because you're like, why are you going with this when you could be going with that? And I really appreciate this is a show that's like they have a plan, but then they look at what they're given, like they look what the actors are bringing to it, and they adjust because that's what you should do. Like if, like I think something that makes the show so great is, I mean, the original plan was these characters were supposed to be like one-dimensional or at best two-dimensional, like stereotypes from 80s movies and TV, and the actors just brought so much more nuance. They're like, well, that was the plan, but we could grow, we could expand this because we're getting great stuff here, and they evolved past that. And I'm like, that's so cool. I think that's what makes the show so interesting, or part of what makes it so interesting for me anyway, is watching the evolution.
They're creating a show steeped in D&D, and they're treating the writing process as a game of D&D. If something's going well, if your players are really, if they're doing something you didn't write out for them and didn't expect, you react to that. You don't just follow your plan and railroad it, you integrate it. And it's something they've always done an incredible job with on this show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, sorry, Jasmin. So one more question before get you guys out of here. And you don't really even have to like really explain this, but I just want to, Zac, I want to hear you say this on the show because I heard it on your show and I really loved it, and I want you to reiterate this for ham radio audience. So you mentioned on the Hellfire Club Collective that Brenner in season 1 was training 11 to kill Henry/1/Vecna. So could you just reiterate your theory for the people?
Well, why are you making faces?
I'm just a read.
Okay.
Tell your theory.
Sorry, that's on my end. So I think this theory, even though I am a staunch believer that season 1 is, for the most part, wholly unconnected until from the overall story until they started season 2, I think this theory still holds up. I think that Brenner's intention was to train 11 to kill 1. And I think if we go back to the scenes in season 1 where he's training her to use her powers, he wants her to murder that cat. He wants her to be less human. He's disappointed when she can't. He is molding her to be a weapon that he can point and fire in whatever direction he needs to. He's constantly putting her in situations that are going to dehumanize her. And in my opinion, that's how you that's the intention, to dehumanize her, to make her something that he can point at Vecna and go, all right, kill this guy. I have to clean up loose ends. You are going to do what I tell you to do. You're powerful enough to do it. Finish the job you started when you were a little kid.
Yeah, and it's a very compelling theory, and it just speaks to just who Brenner is. Like, he takes no responsibility for his actions whatsoever, because it's like what Eleven said in episode 8 of season 4, I believe, and she said, you let this man who murdered his family when he was just a child, you let him near children, knowing, despite having a chip in his neck, knowing what he was capable of. Like, that was absolutely on Brenner. Like, he should have never had Henry around those kids, despite, him having control over him. Like,
yeah, it speaks to his arrogance. Like,
yeah.
Of course I can handle this situation. Nothing's going to happen because I'm in charge, which is bullshit.
Yeah. Would you mind telling everyone where they can find you on the socials, and where they can find your podcast, and what days do you release your episodes?
So social media wise, right now, we just have Instagram, and I run that, and it's at Hawkins Hellfire Collective, same as our podcast, and then we're pretty much available on every podcast platform, wherever you listen to them. We're on Spotify, we're on Apple, I don't know, we're on the big ones, and then release new episodes every Sunday at 10 a.m. So give us a listen if you want to hear us rant and rave about every episode of Stranger Things. Sure to be entertaining.
Yeah, and like hit us up on Instagram. We'd love to talk to anybody who's listening.
Yeah, you know, we say this on our podcast, like if you are on Instagram and you have a particular theory, or if you've listened to an episode and you want to tell us your thoughts, like send us a message. We're always open to, you know, having conversations with fans of the podcast, fans of the show, because it's really fun. Like this was really fun for us because we talk about it just to each other. So getting to talk about it with, you know, another Stranger Things podcast and then, you know, other Stranger Things fans, it was really, really cool.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
we loved having you, and yeah, you should definitely check out their show. Again, you will not be disappointed, especially if you're an Eddie stan. You will not want to miss Devon's hot takes on Eddie. And even if you were like, I'm glad Eddie's dead, they did a good job, you will still want to listen to their podcast because they just might convince you otherwise.
I try my hardest.
Hey, if that's what we're going to be known for, I'm in.
Yeah.
All right, so thank everyone for joining Jasmin and I and Zac and Devon on today's episode. Again, you can check out Zac and Devon on Instagram, and they're available on all platforms, and we'll have all their links linked in today's episode description. So for now, it's me and Jasmin. We're signing off. Over and out.